Hi, everyone. My name is Annie Rogers, and on behalf of the ADDitude team, I am so pleased to welcome you to Solve My Problem. Over the next 40 minutes or so, Dr. Sharon Saline, a clinical psychologist, author, and longtime ADDitude contributor, will answer your questions about all things ADHD. So whether you're a parent seeking advice for your child or an adult seeking help with managing your own symptoms, or both, this session is for you. Dr. Saline, thank you so much for joining us today. We are excited to get started.
I'm so excited to be here. I'm coming to you from the Neurodiversion Conference in Austin, Texas. So it is a real, it's like a double bonus for me. I get to go to the conference and be here.
Excellent. Well, yes, thank you for carving out the time for the ADDitude community. We very much appreciate it. And many of our community members who registered for this event in advance did submit some questions, and we'll use those to get us started today. And then we'll also be asking live questions as well. So I wanted to start with a couple of questions around a very hot topic of productivity, getting things done, and sort of recovering from the fallout, the physical stress and emotional stress of adhering to sort of neurotypical ideals. So the first question along these lines, I can never gauge how much time a thing will take. As I look for a new job, I'm nervous that this time estimation deficit will prevent me from meeting deadlines, and all of that worry feeds into my imposter syndrome. How can I address this? So we got a lot of things packed in this one question.
Wow, that is a lot. I think one of the greatest challenges of struggling with time management, and I know this very well, is that first and foremost, it's easy to underestimate how long something is going to take and overestimate our capacity to do something. And for some people, they overestimate how long something is going to take and they underestimate their capacity to do it. So both of those things are ways in which people with ADHD can get in trouble, because you're not sort of estimating, oh, I have what it takes to do this and the right amount of time, or you think that is going to just take forever. I don't have what it takes, and I don't have, a block of 6 hours, and so I can't break it down into smaller chunks. So I think one thing that really helps with estimating time is getting a sense of the components of the task itself and what time you would need to sort of associate what time blocks you would need to associate with those components. So sometimes you might only have 2 hours to do something. And if the task that you're setting aside for yourself is more than a 2-hour task, then you're not going to meet it. So how do you assess how the size of what something is? And I think it's better to kind of err on the side of shrinking something down into smaller pieces and then accomplishing several of them than having them be bigger chunks that you leave unfinished and then feel bad about yourself. So that's the first part, because when you set aside something for yourself and you don't accomplish it, then that imposter syndrome comes in a number of ways. And one of the ways is that I think it's what it says is, in addition to telling you what a loser you are, is that I can't get stuff done. Look at me, everyone else can do something, but I can't. And I think that actually really hurts us as people. What we want to be able to say is, I need help breaking this down into doable chunks. And if you do need help breaking something down, that's what your supervisor's for. Like, hey, I just want to sort of help prioritize what's most important here in this task, and then go for that. But really, imposter syndrome is about feeling like who you are is not what other people see. And I think with time management, when people struggle with time management, what's on the outside is the task completed or is it not completed? And what people don't see is all the stuff you went through to complete it, or all the stuff you're telling yourself about not doing it. And so I know for me, because I struggle with time management, that I really use that urgent and important matrix, that Eisenhower matrix. So I really work on when is something due, and then I take the thing that's due the soonest and I break it down into parts, and I do that, because then I feel like even if it's a boring task, even if it's something I don't want to do, at least I ate the frog, right, so to speak, and I can feel good that I got this thing done. And then I will reward myself. So that's the other part of this. What's your incentive,
right,
for doing it? So I'll take a walk, or maybe I'll have a phone call, or play with
whatever. Yeah, that's always rewarding. So we do have a related question that's sort of like the fall-on effects of this stress, and that's, do you have any advice on how to recover from burnout as a person with ADHD? They wrote, how can I navigate being fried while needing to continue to show up for work?
Yes. So stress and burnout are related. So stress is a matter of too much. There's too much going on. You have too many commitments, and you start to feel like burdened, constantly burdened. And what happens is with burnout, it's where stress is an issue of too much. Burnout is an issue of not enough. You don't have enough resources anymore. You've used all your resources on those very stressful, overwhelming kinds of activities. And then what's left is nothing. So you feel like, you might lie down in bed and feel like, I have nothing left, right? I just feel empty. And so the best things that you can do to counter burnout include the following. Setting boundaries around activities, including work. So I'm going to work until 7 p.m. and I'm going to stop working. And if it's not done, it's not done. And I'll have to figure something out the next day. But to be clear that you've set that boundary. What happens sometimes with people with ADHD, particularly women who are people pleasers, is they'll take on extra work and extra projects, and then they'll work longer and longer and longer and be burned out. And so we want to really dial that down by saying, no, I'm going to stop at this time. The second thing is actually, and this is real, everyone's going to roll their eyes here, but it's really about practicing some self-care. What does self-care look like for you? So for me, I exercise in the morning. I pretty much exercise every morning. I mean, some days are hard workouts, some days are a walk with the dog, but I move my body every morning. And I do that for one reason, because it's the one thing I can do for myself that no one else can do. And it actually fills up a little bit of that bucket, that energy source bucket. And that's something that I think is worth really thinking about. If you feel burned out, what helps you feel restored? What's restorative? Because a lot of times with burnout, people say, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. This is too much. That's too much. Okay. What would feel good? What would enough be to just get started on something that feels like you're feeding yourself? When plants are all like falling over because they haven't gotten enough water, you might want to put some food in their water, and then they slowly stand up. Don't expect yourself to go from burnt out to fully feeling better the next day, right? It takes a while for that water and the nutrients to sink down into the roots and go all the way up into the plant and the leaves, so it looks better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, our buckets are filled slowly. Sometimes they're depleted quickly, but they're filled slowly.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. That's very helpful. I want to move to a question about relationships.
Mm.
And this one is different and tricky, but I know you can I know you can tackle it, Sharon. This person wrote, I'm 70 and I was recently diagnosed with ADHD. I raised my son, who is now an adult, as a single parent with untreated, raging ADHD. I feel I did a lot of damage to his life out of self-preservation. As a result, he stopped communication between us. How can I begin to repair my relationship with him? This one really, this one really hurts. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, honestly, I feel like you should send him this email because the thing that I'm thinking about is that when you are accountable in this way and you can own, I didn't know I had ADHD and I hurt you and I caused you damage and I deeply regret that. And I've changed. I'm changing. I'm seeking help. I'm taking medication. Could we try some small communication so that I can show you that it's different? Because you can't take back those years. You know, I wish I had done some things differently with my children, and I can't take those back. But I have been able to be fully accountable and apologize. And it wasn't the apology that made the difference, because that was nice. But what made the difference was that I changed my behavior. And so when with a situation like this, if you could reach out, basically saying, I just found this out about myself. I have so many regrets in how I treated you. I wish I had done X, Y, and Z differently, and I'm sorry for the pain and the harm I've caused. Would you be willing to give me a small chance? And you have to keep your expectations really, really low, because there's a whole cultural shift now that it's okay to cut your parents off.
Yeah. Yeah. And I completely agree with your sentiment about behavior, that the apology is necessary, but the behavior is what's going to repair the relationship. And part of that is listening.
Listening. And, you know, I will say in my case, I had to listen and listen and listen and acknowledge and apologize and express my regrets multiple times. And it was very painful. And I'm so grateful that I had someone I could talk to, because, you know, you were raising your child in circumstances where you were the only parent. And that wasn't completely your fault, but those circumstances made it very difficult to be the person you would have wanted to be, because you had no one to reprieve you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So piggybacking on this theme of listening, we did get a live question that is right on, it broadens this a bit, right on this target. How do I stop myself from interrupting others when they're talking?
You can use my wait now method. Why am I talking now? So one of the things that happens with ADHD is that it's hard to have verbal impulse control. Because sometimes the people you talk with are long talkers and you get bored and you just want to like say your thing while you can remember it. So it's also a working memory issue. And B, you could be excited and you just want to get in there. And so you'll do that. And sometimes it's just habit. You know, I just don't wait. I just say what's on my mind. In all of those cases 1, 2, and 3, we need to sort of step back and think about the experience of the person who's being interrupted. So if you can think for yourself, Annie, I don't know if you've ever been interrupted, but I've been interrupted. And when I'm interrupted, I feel very dismissed. How do you feel?
I feel as if I'm not important.
Yes. And so that is the message that's being conveyed, even though that's not your intention, I would assume, the person who wrote in. So I think if you can hold in your mind that when you interrupt, you inadvertently make someone feel like they don't matter or they're not important, then that might get you to start and stop. So it's actually, if you sort of start an interruption and then stop, and they say, "Oh, what do you want to say?" and you're like, "Nothing, nothing. I'm learning I'm learning a new skill, which is called not interrupting." That's one way to go. Another way is to really practice reflective listening. So you're listening hard so that you can then repeat back something that you said and add on to what you want to say. This is extremely challenging for people with ADHD because you have to hold in your working memory the thing that you want to say and the thing that you're going to reflect back. And that is challenging because most people with ADHD have working memory challenges. And working memory is like the computational space in the brain, right? You're holding on to something and doing something with it. One thing that I think is helpful is you could, if you're in a situation, have a pen and a little pad of paper where you write a few things down so you don't have to worry about remembering what you're trying to say. And then the other thing is that if someone is a long talker and you're getting bored, it would be okay to say, "Can I interrupt you for a second? I'd like to repeat back what you're hearing," because some people get on a roll and they're not necessarily aware that other people don't have the attention span to listen to them for 5 minutes. I might have contact with some of these people in my life, and I might choose to write some things down so I don't lose it, or I may just raise my hand and say, "Excuse me, I have a question," or whatever it is.
Gotcha. No, I love that.
I have to say, I had this situation. The people will remain nameless to protect the innocent, but it was a family situation, and people were talking, and I had a timely question. So I said, "Can I please interrupt you for 1 second because I have to leave and I need to ask this question?" And one of the people said, "No." And I was like, "Dude, you're in my house, talking to my husband, and I'm going to say what I want to say." I was so mad. And I was like, "Well, I'm going to ask my question anyway." And then I left the house.
Yeah, sometimes we have to do that. We definitely have to do that. I really like that advice, though, about keeping in mind how you feel when you are interrupted, because I am guilty of interrupting, and I feel like I always have the best intentions, right? Mm-hmm. And the person who's interrupting you might have the best intentions, but it's how you feel that matters. And so remembering that end of things is critical. It's like, okay. Anyway, I won't belabor it. I wanted to move to a question from a parent. And this is the age-old question. If you can hack this one, Sharon, we will all pay you $1 million. What suggestions
I love these
have?
Challenges. Do I get a lifeline? Can I call someone if I have a question? I want to call Ari.
If anyone can answer this question, well, we'll do our best here. But this is, at ADDitude, we hear this as one of the biggest pain points among parents of teenagers. And that is setting screen time limits that they will actually follow. This person wrote and said, "My child's phone is ruining our lives. When we try to take away her phone, she has a panic attack or freaks out so much that it disrupts the entire family. And then no one is regulated or sleeping." I think a lot of people can relate to the pain of this situation?
Yes. In fact, I'm running a group for parents right now, and this was the topic of our conversation earlier in the week. So I think that as parents, usually you own the phone. You pay for the phone service. You might have bought the phone. The phone actually belongs to you, not to your teen. But they have a sense of entitlement about not just the phone, but all technological devices. So it's not only is it okay, it's recommended, not just by me, but by plenty of other mental health practitioners and health practitioners, pediatricians, primary care providers, et cetera, that you set boundaries around screen time for everyone. And the way that you have this conversation is basically to say, we're redoing our family relationship to phones. And this, we're going to change how we do it. I don't want to have phones at the dinner table. So you start small, right? You say, we're not going to have phones at the dinner table. And then people turn off their phone and put the phone away for 15 minutes and see how that goes. Or you can actually, what I would recommend is you have a family meeting when you're talking about this and say, let's pick one time per day for 15 minutes where there's no phones and see how that goes. It's reasonable to set a limit with your teen and their phone about where the phone lives at night and when they can have access to it. So part of the problem for many parents is they've given away the store and now they want to take back part of the store, right? So, oops, I gave you as much screen time as you wanted, but now it's too much. So I want to take it back. And this is where things fall apart. So my personal philosophy is that screen time is a privilege which is earned. And if you're having a meltdown because you can't follow the agreement that we made about the screen, then what you're showing me is you're not ready to earn the privilege of having extra screen time. So essentially, you want to set a baseline for how much phone and when the phone occurs, and then the bonus. So let's say the baseline is you get 3 hours of your phone per day after school, and they want 5 hours. So maybe they can earn an extra 45 minutes to an hour if they do certain things. So for example, they have their 3 hours, they get off without having a meltdown, have dinner, participate in like cleaning up for dinner, whatever your family does, and then they can earn the extra part of the phone. But how you exit your phone privileges have to be contingent on how you earn your extra. Because kids, the baseline is what kids are going to take for granted. It's the bonus, the carrot that they want. So will your kids thank you? No, they will not. Will they push up against you and yell and scream and basically have essentially a 2-year-old fit to see if you change your mind? Yes, they will. And they'll do it over and over again. And again, your baseline has to be, we've agreed that you get 3 hours per day. If you ease off your phone and you participate in dinner and cleaning up after dinner, then you can have another hour. But if you give me a hard time, you're not going to earn that extra hour. It's really hard. So, in the group that I'm running, people are saying it's so hard. We talked about setting this limit, and my 16-year-old daughter went in the bathroom and cried. Yeah, it's really hard. Yep. But many parents feel like their lives are being run by screens. And I'm on a little bit of a mission, a campaign to take back, your family from the tyranny of the phone. But that also means you too. So if dinner has no phones, you don't have your phone either.
Right. Yes. As the parent of 2 teenagers, I absolutely feel for the person who asked this question. And this actually leads into our next question, sort of, that, our kids are extremely smart and will find ways around rules and limits. And that can be incredibly frustrating. So our next question from the live audience was, what are some good ways that I can emotionally regulate myself in the moment when I am triggered by my child or my partner?
I love this question because this, goes into my 5 C's, of course. I do want to say that, when you are recalibrating your family's relationship to phone and phone time, you want to include your child in that process. Because when they are included in the process, when they have, when their ideas about what works, even if they basically want 1,000 minutes and you give them 3, at least they feel like they're in the game negotiating and you're listening. Our children have this 2 incredible capacities. The first is, that red button that is on your chest that sets you off for where you just flip out. They just push that automatically. No one else can see it except them. And they just push it, boom, boom, boom. And you'll just go off the ledge. And so they also have another capacity, particularly in adolescence, to do what I call the dump and jump. So they're going to they're going to back their dump truck up with all of its trash and problems and anxieties and worries. And they're going to dump that out right on your front lawn. And then they'll feel so much better because they've now let it all out so you can hold it. And then they drive away and you're sitting here worried and scared and upset about your child, who now feels about 1,000,000% better because, I got that off, right? So what we have to do as parents is focus on regulating ourselves. And what does that look like? You have to know your signs physiologically of when you're getting triggered. So what happens to you? Do you feel tightness in your chest? Does your breathing get shallow? Does your face get hot? What are some signs that you're heading off into the danger zone? I like to think about Wile E. Coyote and, oh my God, the rabbit.
Roadrunner, no, is it?
Oh, Roadrunner. Yes.
Which one are we? Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Middle-aged moment here. So Wile E. Coyote and would run, the Roadrunner would run to the edge of the cliff, right? And then turn a really hard right. And Wile E. Coyote would keep running off the edge because he hadn't realized that the Roadrunner had turned right, and suddenly looked down and there was nothing to support him. So that's kind of what it's like when we lose it. It's like we sort of fall into this abyss very quickly. And so what we want to do is notice what the physical signs are that we're becoming dysregulated and have a list of what we can do to soothe ourselves, to pull ourselves back. So instead of going off the cliff, you're holding on with your very hands, and your tips at the top. So what are some self-soothers? That's really dependent on who you are. It could be, I'm going to go to the bathroom, lock the door, wash my hands, wash my face, do some breathing, maybe read an article or 2 in the People magazine I have there, whatever. It could be saying, I'm calling a time apart. I need a break and I'm going to take a walk around the block. It could be saying, I need to stop this conversation and I'll get back to you at such and such a time. But I'm finding myself getting dysregulated and I don't want to go that way with you. And in any case, you can control how you respond. And if your child is relentless and keeps going after you, then you might need to literally go into another room, put your backside on the door, and sit there, and they will be yelling at you from the other side of the door. Yes, this has happened to me. And you just keep breathing and say, I can't talk to you while you're screaming at me. I can't listen. My ears aren't working. You have to do whatever you can to put that oxygen mask on your face first. Because the minute that you get dysregulated, you've given them an enormous gift, because now they've got you and you're all worked up and it's all your fault anyway.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. I'm going to turn to, we've had a few questions here today from live attendees about overwhelm. And I'll read one in particular. Someone who asked for help in breaking down tasks into doable chunks and prioritizing them. They wrote, sometimes I get my partner or friends to help me, and it's a good way to lose friends and end relationships.
That's very funny. Yes, that's why you need a very good therapist or a coach to help you, because it might be too much for a friend or a partner.
This person asked if you know of any buddy system communities or apps, or, we're talking about having, someone to walk you through.
I don't offhand. I mean, I can say that I use this. I mean, people use different apps. I like the Microsoft To Do app, because you can have a different list, and then you can have like a task and then sub components of that task. That works for my brain. But some people like Habitua because it's kind of like a little game. What I think is very difficult is that you see the task, it's like Mount Everest, right? And you can't, there's like no place there's no, where do I start the trail? I don't see the trailhead. There's no map. There's no guide. There's no sort of information online about what to do. I'm just stuck here with Mount Everest. And so I'm going to turn around and leave, because who wants to do this? And so I guess the thing is, when you have a task that's too big, most of the people that I work with, when I sit down with them and I say, okay, you have this thing to do, like your taxes, for example, as we're getting closer and closer, it's overwhelming. Ugh, exactly. So what are the ideal things that you have to do? Do a brain dump of the 10 items or whatever it is, and then look through that brain dump, and then draw a column next to it and have a date at which you want to do each one of those, and then have another column, and in this other column you're going to say parts of things that you need to do for the first task. And then you take that one task and you put it on its own piece of paper and you do it. You have to really separate things out. And that's the hard part. But my experience when I talk to people with ADHD who are overwhelmed is if you can lower your anxiety about completing the task and just look at the task. Just put your anxiety and say, I'm going to put it in a box over here. I'm not going to deal with it, whether or not I'm going to get it done. I'm just going to look at what the task is composed of. What are the elements of the task? Then you're actually making it possible to climb Mount Everest.
Okay. And I assume that similar advice would be appropriate for kids. We had a parent write in to say that their 12-year-old daughter really struggles getting started on homework.
Same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. There are a couple other pieces, which are, once you've identified the tasks, there are a couple things you want to think about. One, the order that you like to do them in. So particularly for kids have subjects they like and subjects they don't. And so do adults. But as adults, we sometimes know we have to do things we don't like anyway. But for kids, it's like, I don't like it. I don't feel like doing it, right? So we want to ask our kids, what are the things they like to do, the things they don't like to do? And when they have things that fit both categories, which do they want to start with? Something they like, to feel like you were warmed up and you're moving on it, or something you don't like to feel like you're getting it out of the way and you get to do the fun stuff afterwards. So that's a really important conversation.
Okay. And now we have, this is an interesting question. This is from someone who says they are 53 and continue to struggle with their ADHD. They're also a psychiatric nurse, a nurse practitioner who treats clients with ADHD. And they're asking, how can we better address, teach patients about specifically the emotional dysregulation aspect and rejection sensitive dysphoria of ADHD? These are two components that are not in the DSM, as we know, but almost universally experienced by people with ADHD. Do you have any advice for how to introduce the concept that emotional dysregulation and maybe specifically rejection sensitive dysphoria is part and parcel of ADHD?
Well, I do. I think I need like 3 more hours to talk about those things. And I have some, I think
2 minutes.
Webinars. I think I have 2 minutes. And I think I've done some webinars for you on RSD. What we want to say is that recent research has found that ADHD is not just about organization and motivation and task completion, but that it's really a condition of emotional dysregulation and what we call metacognition, which I like to call self-evaluation. How am I doing? What self-awareness? What's happening around me? How am I fitting in or not fitting in? And so I think that's where I would start. And what is emotional dysregulation? Emotional dysregulation is a lot of what we talked about today. When you have a feeling and it goes from being a small feeling to a tidal wave of emotion that you don't feel like you can control or manage. And this is where people really struggle with ADHD. So it's related to impulse control, it's related to emotional control, it's related to verbal control and behavioral control. And these intense feelings are also, directly related to working memory, which influences emotional control. So I would really want to say that the research is changing, and hopefully the diagnostic criteria will change. But that's what we're seeing. That it's really it's not just a condition of impulse control, but it's a condition of emotional regulation and a sort of misunderstanding of metacognition, like of how you are in space and what you do affects others.
Mm-hmm. That's fascinating. And for those of you who are listening, we will hope that you'll check out the resources that we've gathered for this event. And we will also add to those resources the links to Dr. Saline's other webinars for ADDitude and those that touch on emotional dysregulation so that you can learn more about it. For now, I'm afraid that was our last question. So for our live audience, again, we hope you will take advantage of the resources provided by ADDitude and by Dr. Saline. You will also receive an email with a link to access the recording and those resources in just a few days. And if you are a podcast listener, you can visit ADDitudeMag.com and search podcast 550 to access the video and resources. Dr. Saline, thank you so much for joining us today and for your really thoughtful and thorough answers to our community's questions.
Thank you for having me. And there is a free downloadable that will be in the resources. Check it out. If you're already on my mailing list, don't worry, you won't get 3 emails from me a week. But it talks about my 5 C's of ADHD method and executive functioning skills. So make sure you check that out. And thank you so much for joining us. I look forward to seeing you next month.
Yeah, so on that note, the next Solve My Problem is scheduled for Friday, April 25th at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. So we hope to see you then. And to make sure that you don't miss any future ADDitude updates or resources, you can sign up to receive our free email newsletters at attitudemag.com/newsletters. Thanks again, everyone, and have a wonderful weekend.
Bye. Thank you.